What was supposed to be one of the offseason's biggest trades has exploded into controversy. Baltimore Ravens owner Steve Bisciotti reportedly sent Maxx Crosby a shocking video explaining why the deal was canceled, leaving Crosby furious and blindsided. In this video, we'll break down the message, why the Ravens pulled out, and why Crosby's reaction is now one of the NFL's hottest stories. On March 6, 2026, the NFL world stopped. ESPN sources reported the Raiders had agreed to trade five-time Pro Bowl defensive end Maxx Crosby to the Baltimore Ravens in exchange for 2026 and 2027 first-round picks. This was not a small move. According to ESPN, it marked the first time in the Ravens' 31-year history that they traded a first-round pick for a player, two of them no less. The deal did not come out of nowhere. Crosby asked for a trade in January, and the Raiders agreed that it was the best path forward for both sides. The roots of the situation went back to the end of the 2025 season. Crosby's road out of Las Vegas initially began when the team placed him on injured reserve for the final 2 games of the 2025 season due to a knee injury he had been battling. Crosby was disgruntled by the decision, but he did undergo an off-season procedure to repair his meniscus. So when the trade was reported, there was a sense of finality to it. The Raiders had their 2 first-round picks. The Ravens had their pass rusher. Everyone moved forward accordingly. The Ravens walked through it with the offer of 2 first-round picks on March 6th, a good enough haul for the rebuilding Raiders to move on from the face of their franchise. The trade could not be agreed to until the start of the league year on March 11th, but for the next few days, the Ravens, Raiders, and rest of the league proceeded as if a deal was done. The trade made football sense for Baltimore. A 5-time Pro Bowler, Crosby has logged 69.5 sacks over the past 7 seasons. He plays with a Ravens-like edge and physicality, who will instantly upgrade Baltimore's defense under new head coach and defensive play caller Jesse Minter. Crosby is a game wrecker, which the Ravens saw firsthand in 2024 when he had 2 sacks and 4 tackles for loss in a Raiders win in M&T Bank Stadium. The numbers backed it up. Most tackles for loss in a player's first 7 seasons since 2000, J.J. Watt with 136, Maxx Crosby with 133, Aaron Donald with 131, DeMarcus Ware with 127, and Von Miller with 111. That is the kind of company Crosby keeps. The Ravens stunned the league by acquiring star edge rusher Maxx Crosby from the Las Vegas Raiders in the most significant trade in franchise history, in which Baltimore parted ways with 2 first-round picks. Yes, 2 first-rounders are departing Baltimore, an organization that has historically preferred to build and develop through the draft. Crosby arrives as a 5-time Pro Bowl selection, who leads the league with 360 quarterback pressures since entering the NFL in 2019. The Ravens needed this. The Ravens' 30 sacks as a team in 2025 were the 3rd fewest, and their pressure rate of 19% was the 5th worst mark in the league. They had fired John Harbaugh. They had hired Jesse Minter. They had missed the playoffs for just the 2nd time in Lamar Jackson's career. Things needed to change. And trading for Crosby felt like the change. Ravens decision-makers had been in Florida meeting with owner Steve Bisciotti to hammer out the details. They'll exit the meetings with a game-changing pass rusher. The Ravens haven't traded a first-round pick for a veteran player in team history until this deal for Maxx Crosby. Crosby, for his part, accepted the trade with everything he had. Crosby confirmed that he's had early conversations with Ravens general manager DeCosta, head coach Jesse Minter, and owner Steve Bisciotti. He also added, "I cannot wait to grow those relationships." He posted a 13-minute farewell video to Raiders fans. He said his goodbyes. He packed his bags, mentally and otherwise. ESPN also reported that the Dallas Cowboys were willing to give the Raiders a 1st and 2nd round pick for Crosby. Baltimore outbid them with 2 firsts. The Ravens wanted Crosby that much, and Bisciotti's involvement at the ownership level made it clear this was a franchise-level decision, not just a front office move. With the trade framework in place, Crosby flew east to complete his physical. That was the last procedural step before the deal became official, at the start of the new league year on March 11th. What happened next, according to Crosby himself, was something he did not expect. The 28-year-old defensive end divulged that after taking a 5-hour flight to D.C., he had to drive another 2 hours to Baltimore to meet the team. Already the experience was not the red carpet arrival you might expect for a franchise-altering acquisition. Once at the facility, the problem started. According to Crosby, the red flags popped up immediately, starting with the fact Ravens GM DeCosta was basically MIA for the 5 hours Crosby was at the facility. "I didn't see him one time," Crosby said. "I'm like, where's Eric at? He just made the trade." Instead of meeting the decision makers who had traded 2 first-round picks for him, instead of shaking hands and celebrating his new team, Crosby says he was stuck grinding through long, drawn-out medical tests, MRIs, scans, focused heavily on his surgically repaired knee. When Crosby finally met with the coaching staff, that did not go as expected either. Crosby admitted the vibe seemed off before they scrapped the deal. "I'm so excited, fired up, this is a new opportunity." You could just tell the energy was off. I dapped Jesse Minter up and he had a blank face. Then came the conversation that changed everything. Crosby stated, "I go into the room, they sit me down on the couch. And he's like, man, I don't know how to say this, but one of our doctors has concerns with the results with your knee. Some of them are concerned about the future. We really want you, and this is what it is, but we're going to have to get more and more opinions." Crosby said he was thinking in his head, what the fuck? That moment, sitting on a couch in Baltimore's facility, hearing that the trade he'd already mentally committed to might not happen, was the point at which Crosby's experience turned from excitement to confusion. Crosby thought another surgery might be on the table, which could have wiped out his 2026 season. Desperate for answers, he called renowned surgeon Neil Elatrache and got a completely different story. Crosby said, "I talked to Dr. Neil Elatric. Neil calls me and he calmed me way down. He's like, Max, don't listen to any of that shit. Your knee is great. You're exactly where you're supposed to be, or even ahead of schedule." That reassurance from the surgeon who actually performed the operation on Crosby's knee was significant. The doctor who had hands-on knowledge of the procedure was telling Crosby to disregard the Ravens medical staff's assessment. On Wednesday morning, Crosby's knee surgeon, Dr. Neil Elatriche, told ESPN that the 5-time Pro Bowler is certainly on track in his planned program and that he was doing an excellent job attacking his rehab, and his knee is responding very well. Dr. Elatriche also addressed the Ravens, saying it was understood that their task was not an easy one. "We truly respect the work of the Ravens staff with Max regarding the contract physical exam. We also understand the challenge the staff faces when tasked to provide a future risk assessment based on an evaluation early in the recovery process. This is especially challenging when dealing with an elite player like Max, considering the level of commitment necessary for a team to obtain him. The timing of this assessment is unfortunate because the apparent risk will lessen as his recovery progresses and his return to performance over the next few months becomes clear." So you have the doctor who did the surgery saying Crosby's knee is fine, and the Ravens medical staff saying they have concerns. That disconnect is what made this entire situation feel off to people around the league. After the medical conversations, Crosby waited. He had spoken to Dr. Elatriche. He had been told his knee was fine. A Ravens staff member even reached out to reassure him. One of the Ravens guys called me and he's like, "Yo, we're trying to figure this out. We're going to get this done. Don't worry." Like 5 minutes later, CJ calls me. He's like, "They're backing out." I'm frozen. I'm like, holy expletive. What the expletive? I'm livid, confused, the whole nine, all in one. 5 minutes. That is the gap between being told we're going to get this done and being told they're backing out. Crosby says the whole thing flipped in a matter of minutes, leaving him stunned and heading straight back to Sin City. The Ravens at least sent him on a private jet. The Raiders put out a statement that night. "The Baltimore Ravens have backed out of our trade agreement for Maxx Crosby. We will have no further comment at this time." That was it. No explanation, no context. Just a declaration that the biggest trade of the 2026 offseason was dead. Baltimore's decision to do so was based on a medical reason, NFL Network insider Mike Garafolo reported. But the league was not buying it. One general manager summarized the feelings around the league to NFL Network insider Tom Pelissero with the following: "This is very much bullying on Baltimore's part. Fallout from Tuesday's news could negatively impact how other clubs work with the Ravens," NFL Network's Cameron Wolf reported. Wolf was told by an NFL general manager that everyone involved in trade talks knew the pass rusher would be out until June or July following his off-season knee procedure. That is the part that angered so many people. The Ravens knew about the knee surgery before they agreed to the trade. They knew Crosby had undergone a meniscus repair in January. They knew he was still in recovery. They knew his timeline. And they agreed to send 2 first-round picks anyway. It's been made clear by multiple people around the NFL at all levels that Baltimore had all the information and understood where Maxx Crosby's knee was. In terms of his recovery timeline, many in the league believe GM Eric DeCosta and the Ravens ultimately just got cold feet. Then came the pivot that confirmed what many suspected. Then, 13 hours after the Raiders announced the Ravens backed out of the trade for Crosby, sources told ESPN's Adam Schefter that Hendrickson reached a 4-year, $112 million deal with Baltimore. 13 hours. The Ravens went from backing out of a trade for Crosby to signing Trey Hendrickson in less than a day. This quick heel turn, followed by the Ravens' decision to sign former Cincinnati Bengals pass rusher Trey Hendrickson to a 4-year, $112 million deal Wednesday morning, led the NFL world, fans and reporters alike, to speculate that the Ravens had buyer's remorse on the blockbuster deal and got cold feet in the 11th hour. With Hendrickson still available 2 days into free agency, and him not costing 2 first-round picks to sign, was that all of a sudden the more intriguing option? The optics were terrible. The timeline was suspicious, and the football world noticed. This isn't Baltimore's first time backing out of a deal. The Ravens treat the days leading up to the new league year like a game of Survivor. The Ringer pointed out that in 2018, when DeCosta was serving as assistant general manager, Baltimore agreed to a long-term contract with free agent wide receiver Ryan Grant. Baltimore voided the deal the next day, after Grant failed a physical. He signed with the Colts and passed their physical less than a week later. A pattern is a pattern. The next day, DeCosta stepped to the microphone, talking for the first time since backing out of the trade. Baltimore Ravens general manager DeCosta struck a somber tone over the decision to not complete the deal and push back on the narrative that he had buyer's remorse. DeCosta got emotional at times in explaining it was a difficult but necessary decision, pointing out that Crosby is one of his favorite players in the NFL, but he had to do what was best for the organization. He veered away from mentioning any medical concerns with Crosby and said the trade was nullified based on our assessment of the situation. Vague, non-specific, and frustrating for anyone looking for a real answer. When asked about cold feet, DeCosta invoked the owner directly. I've got a responsibility to the Ravens, to this community, to our fans, and to Ravens owner Steve Bisciotti to do what we think is best for the club. And that's what we always try to do. Every decision we make is based on this side of, is this what is best for the Ravens? And that's very, very challenging. I understand how people from afar would feel that way, but nobody's more upset about this than me. Gutted by it, actually, a big regret for me. But we will move on as a football team. The mention of Steve Bisciotti in that answer is not coincidental. DeCosta was signaling that this was not just his call. The owner was part of it. Bisciotti had been involved from the beginning. He approved the trade. He was in Florida with the decision makers when it went down, and now his name was attached to the decision to back out. Just days after he fired his close friend and coach of 18 seasons, Ravens owner Steve Bisciotti reaffirmed his trust in another longtime partner, general manager DeCosta. The vote of confidence was understandable given DeCosta's overall success as the franchise's top football executive following his predecessor, Ozzie Newsome. But like outgoing coach John Harbaugh, DeCosta endured a miserable 2025 season. The pressure on DeCosta was real. The stakes are high, and DeCosta is operating like his seat is warm. Just like how Harbaugh's seat evolved throughout his forgettable final season in Baltimore, Bisciotti had already made one major move this offseason, firing Harbaugh. Bisciotti remains convicted in his decision, one he'd contemplated for weeks but does have one regret. If he were to do it again, he wouldn't have informed Harbaugh over the phone. It was the craziest firing in the world, Bisciotti said, apologizing for relieving Harbaugh of his duties via a phone call. I was the one choked up and he was the one consoling me. The firing of Harbaugh was driven by years of fourth quarter collapses and playoff failures. Bisciotti made the decision with a sense of certainty that was informed by watching his team repeatedly crumble in the fourth quarter, producing the most collapses in which they led by 10+ points in the NFL. Over the last 6 seasons, there's also Baltimore's consistent regular season success and equally predictable postseason disappointments. Despite winning 126 regular season games from 2013 to 2025, the Ravens haven't won multiple games in a single postseason in that span. Bisciotti wants to win. He has made that clear. I want to win a couple of Super Bowls and get the hell out. I'd love that to be in the next 10 years when I'm 75. That's my dream. That statement, combined with the Harbaugh firing, the Crosby trade, and the Hendrickson signing, paints a picture of an owner who is pressing the accelerator on a franchise that has underperformed in the postseason. DeCosta clarified that he initially wanted both Crosby and Hendrickson. When expressing his disappointment for how everything ultimately fell through, DeCosta shared how the Ravens viewed Crosby as their biggest foundational acquisition this year. We started some discussions with Hendrickson and his agent, thinking that potentially we'd have 2 pass rushers on the defensive line on both sides of the line. Whether or not the owner sent Crosby a literal video message in the recruitment process, the documented evidence shows that Bisciotti was directly involved in approving this trade, that Crosby confirmed having conversations with the owner, and that DeCosta repeatedly referenced his responsibility to Bisciotti in explaining why the deal was reversed. The owner's fingerprints are all over this situation from start to finish. The fallout from this situation has been felt across the NFL. For Crosby, the trade collapse was a gut punch, but he has handled it with the same intensity he brings to the field. The 5-time Pro Bowl pass rusher spoke about the experience on his podcast, The Rush, giving an impressively in-depth play-by-play of the trade, falling through from his perspective. I mean, I've gone through some in my life, I can't lie, but that whole situation was probably one of the most unique, crazy, wild, up and down roller coasters I've ever been a part of for about 5 days, I would say. No one will ever admit what the real truth is. Ultimately, it doesn't matter. I am where I'm supposed to be. I'm here. On the morning after the deal fell apart, Crosby was already back at work. NFL Network insider Ian Rappaport reported Wednesday morning that Crosby returned from Baltimore and is headed back to the Raiders building to resume his rehab program. Per Rappaport, the pass rusher looks and feels great, per a source, and his mindset is to play football in Vegas and move forward. He posted on social media with a message that made his stance clear. "Everything happens for a reason," Crosby wrote. "Believe nothing you hear and half of what you see. I'm a Raider, I'm back, run that SE." Crosby, who posted on social media the day after the Ravens nixed the trade that he was celebrating 6 years sober, has certainly been through plenty. In the offseason, following his second-place finish in Rookie of the Year voting as a 2020 fourth-round pick, Crosby checked himself into rehab for substance abuse issues. He persevered, and since 2021 has not missed a Pro Bowl, becoming one of the league's most unstoppable pass rushers, with 69.5 career sacks through 7 seasons. For the Raiders, the situation creates complications. After Las Vegas handed out over $280 million in contracts over the first few days of free agency, with $59 million of that going to defensive ends Kwity Paye and Malcolm Kuntz, it appears that the Raiders have already moved on. With Crosby on the roster in 2026, the Raiders still have more than $37 million in available cap space, per Over the Cap. But keeping him on the books could create problems down the line. So financially, it would still behoove the team to find a trade partner. The problem is that finding one will be harder now. Trading 2 first-round picks for a soon-to-be 29-year-old, making significant money who couldn't pass a physical, is going to be a very risky proposition for any executive. Even if another team doesn't share the same medical concerns about Crosby on closer inspection, there will be questions in the building about what the Ravens saw, and whether it should spook any new Crosby suitor. Teams know this and will try to lowball the Raiders in their potential offers as a result. The Panthers are giving Jalen Phillips a $120 million contract. The Commanders will sign Odafe Oweh for $100 million, and the Cowboys are trading for Rashawn Gary. Just about all of the teams that were willing to make a sizable investment in an edge defender may have already made their moves, leaving the Raiders with a much smaller pool of potential trade partners than they had a week ago. And since there's a strong class of edge rushers in the 2026 draft, it will be difficult to find another suitor willing to give up multiple first-round picks for Crosby over the next 2 months. There is one small thread of hope for the Raiders. Of course, every team needs pass rushers, and not all of them will land one in the draft. If playoff contenders like the Bills, Bears, and Eagles still have holes in their edge rusher depth charts as we get deeper into the offseason, the price to acquire Crosby could once again rise. For the Ravens, the situation is different. They have Hendrickson. They kept their 2 first-round picks, but their reputation has taken a hit. But Baltimore has drawn criticism among league circles because the team voided the trade with Crosby, which included sending 2 first-round draft picks to the Raiders, and quickly pivoted to a deal for 4-time Pro Bowl pass rusher Trey Hendrickson that didn't require giving up any draft capital. When DeCosta was asked if this would hurt his reputation, he was defiant. "Well, it hasn't stopped my phone from ringing, I'll tell you that." But that answer only goes so far. The fact remains that the Ravens drew a conclusion about what they saw on the physical that convinced them they didn't want to do the deal. Another team could give him a physical and feel differently, and move ahead with a trade for Crosby. As for Crosby, his mentality has not changed. "I don't play for that external stuff," Crosby said. "I play the game because I love it, because it's my passion since I was a child. I play for my legacy. I play to win. I play for my teammates." It just made that even more clear. The entire saga, from the owner approving the trade in Florida, to the visit falling apart in Baltimore, to the Hendrickson signing hours later, raises questions that may never be fully answered. The Ravens say it was medical. The league says they got cold feet. Crosby says nobody will ever admit the real truth. What we know is this: Steve Bisciotti approved a trade that his organization then reversed. Eric DeCosta cited his responsibility to Bisciotti while explaining the reversal. Crosby had conversations with the owner before everything collapsed, and the Ravens signed Hendrickson for $112 million without giving up a single draft pick less than 13 hours after walking away from Crosby. The rest of the league is watching. The Raiders are recalculating. And Maxx Crosby is back in Las Vegas, working out, 6 years sober, ready to play. Whether he stays a Raider for 2026 or finds a new home before the draft remains to be seen. But one thing is clear: this story is not over, not by a long shot.